in that time, we're actually getting close to finishing Isaiah. Can you believe it? I did not expect to take this long, but I know I have been gaining and learning a lot from this, and there's so much of a message that we need in our day. As we see so many of the same things that's going on in Isaiah's day are happening in our own day, and how we are not exempt. We should not expect to be treated better um, than his people when it comes to what we read in Isaiah about the Lord's discipline and such. But we're nearing the day when Isaiah, he's spelling out what the people of God must do, what they've got to hold on to in order to keep that future glory. They've got to keep that front and center in their mind, in their hope, to give them hope through those times that he says are coming, those times of tribulation, those times of judgment and doubt and even exile. He mentions that very specifically. But what's amazing about chapter 65 is the ones who hear his voice and respond in these times, especially as we are approaching the last days. It won't always be Israel that hears and responds. Verse 1 puts it like this. It says, I was sought by those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. I said, Hineni, here I am, to a nation not called by my name. So Isaiah, he sees a day, he marvels at it, as really does God, when those who are not among God's chosen people seek him and find him. Sought by those who, it's as if they don't even know enough about him to ask for him by name. And we are really the ones that this is talking about, most of us here. We are the ones that Isaiah is talking about. But think about it like this, not having enough to even know to ask him by name. Have you ever had your phone ring and you answer it and you say hello, and the person who called you says, yes, who is this? Have you ever had that happen? Who am I speaking to? It's like, well, wait a minute. You called me, don't you know? That's kind of what this is going on. He is answering those who don't even know who they're talking to. He was found by those not seeking him, who didn't even know to look for him, who were kind of minding their own business, and it's like they bump into him. It's like getting into a conversation in the grocery store, and you have no idea who you're talking to, and then you walk away, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Did you know that was a movie star that you were just talking to?" Around here, I think Harrison Ford is supposed to live somewhere around here, right? Anybody seen him bounce around? You had no idea who you were talking to. Because if you did know, how would you be acting? Would you be acting all nervous? Would you be acting all trying to ask for an autograph or get a picture or something like that? He was found by those who did not seek me, to a nation not called by my name. These people who seek and who find have no idea who he really is. They weren't there to hear Moses read, every Shabbat. They weren't there when he says in Exodus, when they come to this portion, Moses said to God, suppose I go to Bnei Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they asked me, what is his name? What should I say to them? And God answered Moses, I am who I am. And then he said, you are to say to Bnei Israel, I am has sent me to you. These are the people that are seeking him, or those who are found by him. They don't even know that. They had never heard of any of this before. As God also said to Moses, you are to say to Bnei Israel, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and the name by which I should be remembered from generation to generation. And they're going to be sitting there, they're bumping into God, and they're like, who's Abraham? Who's Isaac? Who's Jacob? I have no idea who those people are. Should I know who those people are? See, there is a future time from Isaiah's perspective when the nations who are not called by his name, who never heard of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they are somehow in relationship and covenant with him because they are responding to the Messiah. They are responding to the Word of God. They're responding to the Memra. You see that in those Aramaic translations. You see that in this verse 1 of the Targum. He says, I am asked concerning my Memra, concerning my Word. Again, that's where John, when he writes John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He's drawing from this Aramaic understanding. I am asked concerning my Memra of them who have not asked after me. I am inquired of for instruction in my law. Isn't that an interesting statement? Of them who have not sought my fear. I will say, behold, I am inquired after continually all the day of a people that have not prayed in my name. So he's saying in this Aramaic understanding that they are seeking the Word. They are seeking this Memra, which is the Messiah. They are inquiring for instruction. They want to know God's ways from his Torah. They want to know who have not sought my fear, right? They have and what is fear supposed to be? Fear is the beginning of wisdom. So they're lacking in even the basics. They don't even know how to pray or what name to pray in. The nations in the future, from Isaiah's perspective, are intended, are expected, they are known by God to respond to Messiah in ways that his own people will not. And again, we are living, most of us here, examples of that. The Apostle Paul makes the same connection in Acts chapter 17. Paul was waiting in Athens. So his spirit was aroused within him when he saw that the city was full of idols. They had all kinds of names to call upon, all kinds of gods to pray to, but they didn't know the one. So he was debating in the synagogue with the Jewish people and the God-fearers, as well as in the marketplace every day with all who happened to be there. Also, some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers who were conversing with him. Some were saying, what's this babbler? What's this strange foreign guy? What's he trying to say? While others, he seems to be the proclaimer of foreign deities, because he was proclaiming the good news of Yeshua and the resurrection. What's happening in 65 is happening right here. It says, so they took Paul to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new teaching is that you are talking about? For you are bringing some strange things to our ears, so we want to know what these things mean. Now all the Athenians and foreigners visiting there used to pass their time doing nothing but telling or hearing something new. And so Paul stood in the middle of the Areopagus and said, men of Athens, I see that in all ways you are very religious. For while I was passing through and observing the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. You guys are just covering your bets. You don't even know what to call him, but you think he might be out there, and so you're hedging your bets. So therefore, what you worship without knowing, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by hands, nor is he served by human hands as if he needed anything, since he himself gives to everyone life and breath and all things. From one he made every nation of men to live on the face of the earth, having set appointed times and the boundaries of their territory. And notice what it is. It parallels perfectly with Isaiah 65:1. They were to search for him and perhaps grope around for him and find him, yet he's not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as some of your own poets have said, for we also are his offspring. And since we are his offspring, we ought not to suppose the deity is like gold, silver, or stone, an engraved image of human art and imagination. Although God overlooked the periods of ignorance, now he commands everyone everywhere to repent. For he has set a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness through a man whom he has appointed. He has brought forth evidence of this to all men by raising him from the dead. And when you continue on in the account, many of those intellectuals there in Athens, they scoffed at the talk of resurrection, but there were others there in that crowd that were listening that did believe. This moment is a demonstration of Isaiah 65 being fulfilled, and the things that have happened since then are similar. Messiah is going out to the nations, going out to those who did not ask for him. God being found by those who didn't even know his name. In that time when the nations are seeking him, they're finding him, they're calling out in response to Messiah's presence, calling out for his Torah, while all of that's going on in increasing numbers among the nations, his own people are rejecting and missing it. Isaiah 65 verse 2, remember that's all happening in verse 1. Verse 2 says, I have stretched out my hands all day to a rebellious people who walk in a way that is not good, following their own thoughts. He has reached out to his own people in the days of Messiah, and they did not seek him the same way. They did not respond to him the same way that the Gentiles did. And so they haven't found him the same way or in the same numbers that they did. That's despite all of the advantages that they had compared to the rest of the nations. Now, Romans chapter 3 puts it like this. He says, then what is the advantage of being Jewish, or what is the benefit of circumcision? He says, much in every way. There's a great advantage. First of all, they were entrusted with the sayings of God. They have the Word. They have the sayings. They have the Torah, the prophets, and the writings in ways that the rest of the nations don't. So they knew the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They knew the redemption story. They knew all these things about him. But with that, do they really know him? You know, it's possible to know a lot about God. Y'all realize this, right? It's possible to know a lot about him. It's possible to have a lot of verses, to have a lot of prayers memorized. It's possible to go through the motions, all the time, every week, and still not have a loving relationship of faith. Knowledge in and of itself is not enough. You're missing something if that's all you've got. And I know we can be like that today, because most homes in America, how many of these do most homes have? Several. And how well do they know him? Not very. And even more than the sayings of God, as far as the advantages, the Jewish people, they had others. Chapter 9, he says, to them belong the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the Torah and the temple service and the promises. To them belong the patriarchs. and from them, according to the flesh, the Messiah, who is over all, God blessed forever. Amen. They have many advantages. They've had generations of relationship with him. And that's what makes the moment of Messiah's arrival so tragic, when they did not recognize the time of their visitation. John 1 says, the true light coming into the world gives light to every man. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, but the world did not know him. He came unto his own, but his own did not receive him. That's a tragic, tragic statement. To have all of those advantages, knowing all of the stories and the patterns of God's actions, of his deliverance and his redemption, and still not recognize him when he shows up in their midst. And again, the Aramaic reveals how they understand who they are rejecting and even provoking. Verse 3 says, a people that provoketh my word, my memra, to anger continually to my face, that sacrifices in gardens to idols, and offereth aromatic spices upon the bricks, who provokes my Messiah. Verse 11 reveals even more of what's going on among the hearts of his people. He says, oh, y'all couldn't see that, could you? I'm sorry. Verse 11 says, but you who forsake Adonai, who forget my holy mountain, who prepare a table for fortune, who fill cups of mixed wine for fate. He is accusing his people of forsaking Adonai, and even basically losing track of Jerusalem, where Jerusalem loses its significance and center of their walk of faith. Forgetting about Jerusalem, not thinking about Jerusalem, which I understand that to mean that they're no longer even interested in making the pilgrimage for the feast days. That's how off the radar Jerusalem has become for them. And the thing about fortune and fate, you hear a lot of people talking about similar things in our day. People talk about, luck or things being fated, neither of which require anything from you. They just kind of happen, and you have no responsibility, no part to play in either one of those things. But both of those concepts are really forms of idolatry. When you look up, most of the commentaries will say these are, maybe they might be names of various Babylonian gods, but the Aramaic and even the Septuagint, the Greek translation, reveal what they thought about these things called fortune and fate in the centuries before Yeshua was even born. In the Aramaic it says, them that prepare tables for the idols and mix goblets for their gods. The Septuagint makes it even a stronger statement, and prepare a table for the devil and fill up the drink offerings to fortune. So the Jewish people understood, and again, these are those generations before Yeshua came, that preparing a table of welcome and fellowship and covenant for these things was about idolatry. It's not saying, I'm preparing he is preparing a table before me in the presence of my enemy, but you're letting the enemy sit at the place of honor. It's a place for the devil, and making drink offerings essentially to another god. It's like a fellowship meal, or even a covenant meal with the demonic. It's spiritual adultery. That's how significant. That's when we talk about luck, when we talk about fate or fortune in that way, we don't realize how much our culture is spinning off into idolatry. And there are consequences. He says, I'm going to fate you all right. I'm going to fate you to the sword. And all of you will kneel to slaughter, for I called, but you did not answer. I spoke, but you did not hear. So you did what was evil in my sight, and chose what I did not delight in. Again, Isaiah is pointing out that he is justified and he is right when he judges. But if you claim to be his people, And this goes for us today. You don't want to do what he says is evil. You don't want to choose what he hates or what he does not delight in. Don't let we have this is conversations that we've had multiple times. I know y'all have all had conversations with friends and family. You don't let human wisdom and fine-sounding arguments take you captive to convince you to do things that are evil in his eyes or to what he does not delight in. All of our excuses, all of our interpretations, our reasoning to justify not doing the things that he tells you to do or to give yourself permission to do the things that he tells you not to do, that doesn't matter because he is the one who sets the standard. You and I don't get to make it up as we go. Because if you try to do that, you'll miss out on the blessing that God wants to give. Verse 13, it says, "Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, my servants will eat, while you will go hungry. Behold, my servants will drink, but you will be thirsty. Behold, my servants will rejoice, but you will be put to shame. Behold, my servants will sing for joy with a happy heart, but you will cry from pain of heart and wail out of a broken spirit. You will leave your name behind as a curse for my chosen ones, and Adonai Elohim will slay you, but he will call his servants by another name." And this one's a challenge to figure out. The question becomes, who are his servants at this point? Clearly, in this conversation, Isaiah is telling his people what they are going to be missing out on by being out of fellowship, by making offerings to fate and fortune, these idols of other gods. Those are not his servants for a season because they are not responding to his call. So who are his servants? You got to go back up to verse 1, actually. Those who sought and found him, who didn't even know his name, the nation not called by his name, they are going to experience in this future a blessing and favor for this season. Why? Because they respond, because they recognize the Memra, the word, the Messiah has come. And this is all to bring God's people to repentance, to a willingness to embrace him and his ways. And they have to focus not on the suffering, not on the hardship, on the tribulation, but to focus on that future promise, those things yet fulfilled in order to endure until it all comes to pass. And we do as well, because again, we're in that downward cycle as a people and a nation. We're seeing things as they decline, while once experiencing his blessings, as we drift and make excuses to go further and further away from his halakha, his ways. We're seeing it. But then something happens. Something changes. An important event takes place that seems to trigger all of those things getting turned around and reversed. All of a sudden, it's as if there is a return. Without saying how they got there, those who know and call on his name have come home, and they are returned to the land. Verse 16, he says, "So he who says the bracha, the blessing in the land, will be blessed by the God of truth. And he who swears in the land will swear by the God of truth, for the former troubles are forgotten because they are hidden from my sight." When his people are in the land, saying the blessings and meaning it and seeking his face, they will know blessing by the God of truth. His word is truth. His memra is truth. Yeshua himself said what? "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So a new day is approaching that changes everything that has come before. Now Isaiah he's already talked about the Babylonian captivity, the exile that is coming. So is this the return that he's talking about? I mean, he's already spelled that part out. On some level, there is certainly a blessing in their return, but that return did not fulfill everything that Isaiah is talking about here in 65 and 66. Because Isaiah not only talked about the return from Babylon, he also talked about the last days and how things are going to be in those last days. He does that in chapter 2, right at the very beginning. It will come to pass in the last days that the mountain of Adonai's house will stand firm as head of the mountains and will be exalted above the hills. And so, who is it that's flowing to it? All the nations. His kingdom, his mountain, rising above all of the other nations, and the nations of the world who don't know him, don't have his word, are going to be remembering Jerusalem. They're going to be making pilgrimage to his place so they can be taught his Torah, his ways. That's the future to look forward to. That's where everything that we see going on, even in our own day, that's where it's going. It's hard to see it right now. It's hard to see it in today's world where wickedness seems to be on the increase. But the trigger, the thing leading up to all of that, is his people who are scattered being back in the land. That seems to be one of the more important things that starts moving the ball rolling in that direction. And at the appointed time, when everything is in place, in the fullness of time, God sends Messiah. Not as the suffering servant to bring redemption, but the Messiah ben David, the conquering king, to accomplish it all. He says in verse 17, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered or come to mind, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I am creating. For behold, I am creating Jerusalem for rejoicing and her people for joy." This truth, this future, this promise, this reality is what we've got to hold on to for the days ahead. It's going to give us strength. It's going to give us hope. It will give us courage and conviction through all these things that are coming, because ultimately, what is it? This world, is it our home or is it not our home? This world is not my home, right? I'm just, how's that song go? This world is not my home, I'm just passing through. Our future is ordained for a radically different existence than what we see right now. Even the heavens and the earth will be changed. They will no longer even fulfill the role that they have been designated to in our day. We read last night in the Torah portion that no one can be convicted, no one can be given the death penalty based only on one witness, right? They have to have 2 to 3 witnesses, right? We have 2 witnesses that testify against us in this day. That's the heavens and the earth. Deuteronomy 30, he says, "I call the heavens and the earth to witness about you today, that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore choose life so that you and your descendants may live, by loving Adonai your God, listening to his voice and clinging to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, so that you may dwell on the land that Adonai swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them." That's if you have life, if you're choosing all of those things. But far too often we are not choosing those things. We are choosing the curse. And so the heavens and the earth testify to what? That he is right in judging. Much of Isaiah 65 parallels what's happening in Deuteronomy chapter 30, and I'd recommend going back and reading all of that. But in the future kingdom of Messiah, The heavens and the earth will be new. They'll have a new function and a new purpose. They'll no longer be testifying against us, bringing this curse, but now only the blessing of God's presence. Chapter 65, verse 19 says, "Then I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad in my people. No longer will the voice of weeping or the voice of crying be heard in her." That's the day that's coming. The suffering and pain and sorrow that we experience now is not our future. It's not what the Olam Haba, the world to come, is going to be like. There will be joy in the presence of the King. It reminds me of one of my favorite musicians, Andrew Peterson. It reminds me of a song of his called "After the Last Tear Falls." It has a great chorus in there. It says, "And in the end is oceans and oceans of love and love again. We'll see how the tears that have fallen were caught in the palms of the giver of love and the lover of all. And we'll look back on all these tears as old tales, as, stories that it's hard to believe that they're even true, that it ever happened that way." Life will be different during the 1,000-year, rest and reign of Messiah. All the things that plague this life from beginning to end will be gone, and we'll even see things like the ancient ages of those before the flood coming back and restored. Verse 20 says, "No longer will there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not fill out his days, for the youth will die at 100 years. But one who misses the mark of 100 must be accursed." Someone dying before 100, it reads as if that's more like a hypothetical, as if that happens, then something really bad must go on in order for that to even happen at all. That's not going to be the norm. And this week's Torah portion again speaks to some of the next verses. When speaking to men coming to fill the ranks of the army to fight off an invading enemy, Moses writes about this in Deuteronomy 20. He says, "The officers are to speak to the troops, saying, 'What man has built a new house but has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his house. Otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man would dedicate it. What man has planted a vineyard but has not put it to use? Let him go back to his house. Otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man would begin to use it. What man has become engaged to a woman but has not married her? Let him go back to his house. Otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man would marry her.'" Right? That's what we were reading last night. But in contrast, in Messiah's kingdom, the threat of all of this is gone. The threat of war is gone. As people live in peace, they'll be able to enjoy the abundant life that Yeshua promised. That, "I've come," he said, "that you may have life and have it more abundantly." In other words, without this fear of loss. Isaiah 65 turns this around. In that future, he says, they will build houses and inhabit it. They won't have to worry about going off to fight somewhere else. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They will not build and another inhabit, nor plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree, so will be the days of my people, and my chosen ones will long enjoy the work of their hands. They will not labor in vain, nor bear children for calamity, for they are the offspring of those blessed by Adonai, as well as descendants with them. And it will come to pass that before they call, I'm going to answer. And while they are still speaking, I will hear. That's the future. That is how close he will be to us, to his people. He hears and he answers. He responds in favor toward his people, even before they're done with their petition or their request, even when we don't know what or how to pray. In this day, the Spirit intercedes with groanings that words cannot express in this world. In that day, God's actions are front and center. And again, all of those former hostilities, all those dangers and death will be gone. Even the great predator, the devil, who prowls around like a roaring lion searching for someone to devour, won't be the threat that he is today. It says the wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw like the ox, but dust will be the serpent's food. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, says Adonai, in all of my kingdom. In his kingdom there will be peace. We will experience the Shabbat rest that is to come, that Hebrews promises. Isaiah's prophecy and the testimony in Hebrews and other scriptures encourage us to endure and hold firm today in this world in anticipation of that day, the last day, and the arrival of the King. Right now it's Elul, right? Right now the King is in the field and he is circling. And there's going to come a time when he says, turn and go and enter into the city, right? And there'll be a great triumphal entry. That's where we're at. And the trigger has been manifest with the people back in the land. This is how Hebrews encourages us to live. He says, encourage one another day by day as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin, for we have become partners of Messiah if we hold our original conviction firm until the end. Chapter 4, verse 9 says, so there remains a Shabbat rest for the people of God. For the one who has entered God's rest has also ceased from his own work, just as God did from his. Let us, therefore, make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through the same pattern of disobedience. In other words, fix your eyes on the goal. Fix your eyes on the prize of the kingdom. Fix your eyes on Messiah, on Yeshua, the author and perfecter of our faith, who made the many righteous because he bore our iniquities. And chapter 12 puts it like this. Therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also get rid of every weight and entangling sin. You know, if we know these are getting closer, then these are the things that we've got to remove from life. Let us also get rid of every weight and entangling sin, but let us run with endurance the race set before us. It's not promising that everything's going to be easy or everything's going to be better or just magically improving. No, he's going to give you strength to endure. It says, focusing on Yeshua, the initiator and perfecter of faith, because look what he was willing to endure to make it all happen. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and he has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you may not grow weary in your souls and lose heart. Because we have, if we truly believe and hold on to that future, we have that future to look forward to, then we can have strength for today. Because the promise continues, the promise of a new heaven and a new earth, of a new Jerusalem, when the King comes in power and glory. That's how Revelation brings it all focused in on. He says he's continuing really the thoughts of Isaiah. He says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. I also heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, Again, this is the future. The dwelling of God is among men, and he shall tabernacle, he shall dwell among them. They shall be his people, and God himself shall be among them and be their God. For all those who have responded and heard his call. Goes on, verse 4, he says, he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Nor shall there be mourning or crying or pain any longer, for the former things have passed away. The one seated upon the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. And he said, write, for these words are trustworthy and true. That is what Isaiah was looking forward to. That's what gave his people hope. Still gives his people hope. That's what gives us hope. For what we know is headed our way. And it reminded me, all of this reminded me of another song that you may know. You can maybe sing it when we get to the chorus. But one of the verses says, pardon for sin and a peace that endureth. Thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Y'all know how it goes? Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.